yesterday.
What was?
Ella leaves a month from yesterday.
We'll all be wanting to send those back.
But she still doesn't know where she's living.
She does, kind of. So
She knows she's not on a wait list.
correct.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah. So they can't. She hasn't officially gotten a dorm assignment.
She
but
hasn't
because
not.
but because she hasn't gotten notification she's on a wait list, that means she's somewhere on campus.
That's good. That's a relief. Right?
Yeah.
We're live.
Okay. All right, thank you everyone for your patience. I believe we are back. So I'd like to welcome Ms. Doring, our Director of Food Services, to give us our food services update.
Awesome, thank you. I am just here this evening to provide a very quick update on the status of free meals. So for the duration of the pandemic, we've been able to provide meals free of charge, breakfast and lunch to all the students in the Watertown School District. When we come back from winter vacation, so starting Tuesday, January 3rd, unfortunately that is coming to an end, and we will be back to the traditional paid, reduced, and free meal system. So the way free meals, just so you have a little bit of background, worked this year is the state gave us $321,000 to cover meals as far into the school year as we were able to. Capturing the meals from September, October, and November, we served 37,297 breakfasts, 89,755 lunches, and based on those projections, we know that our funds are going to be used up at the end of December. So we have sent out our preliminary email to all families to let them know of this. We will send out a few additional emails this month, and then right before we come back from break, reminding families of this. We are, of course, encouraging and promoting the free and reduced lunch application because families that fill out the application and qualify for either free or reduced price meals will, of course, continue to receive those benefits. The cost for meals when we come back in January is something that we discussed at a board meeting last spring, but just as a reminder, the cost for an elementary breakfast is $1.75, elementary lunch is $3, secondary breakfast is $2.25, and a secondary lunch is $3.50. In addition to promoting the free and reduced lunch application, we are also reminding and encouraging families to load funds onto their child's account through the My School Bucks, which most people are familiar with because that is the easiest way to make sure that your child has money for lunch, breakfast or lunch every day. So that is all that I have to say about free and reduced meals. We will keep trying to get the word out. We want to get as many families to qualify to get the benefits that they're able to get. Any questions on the meal prices or this transition or free and reduced lunch applications?
Thank you, Ms. Doring. Do any board members have any questions or comments? Yes,
I
Ms.
have a
Huskins.
question through the chair.
Yes.
What happens as we transition to students whose parents, because they haven't for a while, loaded those funds on, or kids are left without funding for lunch? Is there a plan in place for?
So the state of Connecticut required our district to have a charge policy, which was something that we worked on last year, Dr. Villanueva and I and our cabinet team. Students will be permitted in those types of situations to charge their breakfast or lunch, and then we have a series of procedures that will reach out to the families, send home the free and reduced lunch application, and go through the motion with the family to try to get things good on the back end, but we will still absolutely be feeding all of the children, you know, in that moment, and not lunch shaming is the term that will not be lunch shaming anyone.
So there's some proactive and reactive ways to go about our charging policy. The proactive ways are right now, Emily and her interns will obviously continue on with promoting the free and reduced lunch applications, but also to go through our My School Bucks accounts and to say, alert, alert, we can send them straight through our My School Bucks platform to say that you have a low balance. That'll give families just a reminder and an inkling to put some funds into there. Then on the reactive side, sometimes we do have students who will go into arrears, and when that happens, there's continual communication. But ultimately, we do feed our students, yes.
Thank you. Any other board members?
Through the chair, I do have a question. It's my understanding that these forms are sent to parents at the beginning of the school year, and that if they received free or reduced lunch in the past, they will get it again without having to fill out the form again. Is that true?
That is not true. So when you apply, it is only for that school year. So families do need to reapply each year. We did send home copies of the application to students at the beginning of the year, the first week of school. In my emails, I've included the link, and all of our school secretaries have copies of the application, so if they're fielding phone calls, they can get it home. Something new this year is we have a platform called My School Apps, which is an opportunity for families to fill out the free and reduced, the same application, but directly online, and then it comes right to my office, so it just cuts out a little bit of that processing time of the child having to bring it in, the teacher having to get it to my office, and then it going through that process. The My School Apps platform, we started the beginning of this school year, and we received 155 applications through that platform, so it is being well utilized. And I think a lot of families, all the feedback that I've heard is that's a very user-friendly platform to submit it. But to answer your question, they will need to reapply. If someone's not sure what their meal status is, we've been encouraging them to call my office. But the best thing to do if you're not sure is just submit the application again, because it doesn't hurt to put it on file again.
Thank you. Any other board members have any questions or comments?
I just had a comment. I mean, would it behoove the district just to send out a reminder email again? And is there a way to like check the box, hey, I did receive this and we're good to go type of thing?
Emily will, and I know she's continuing to, so we can continue to send out more blasts, yeah.
Yeah. Just maybe you, but what box, just so I understand what your
Well,
idea is, because I'm open to any ideas.
Well, because I know I'm personally inundated with a million emails, but something like this, which is important for a response back in some way, like just to check the box, like, hey, I read this, we're good, or hey, I read this, I'm sending what I need to back in. So I'm of the, it's almost like, you know, like when you have to scroll and you have to check, just to be like, hey, we did receive this.
Okay.
So
Just to give clarity, I mean, that was my thought. That's
So
all.
I don't know if we have the ability to do acknowledgements, but what I was gonna say was to go and look at the email stats, right, the open rates and things
That's
like
true,
that,
yeah.
to see what the impact is, engage, is it being open? Because I think pretty quick, you're gonna have an indication if only 5% are opening the email, chances are, most people aren't seeing it or getting it, right? And we can rethink it, or rethink other ways to try and get the information in front of them. The other thing I was gonna add was, if it's possible, on each school's page, to put a quick blurb with a link and either a special message or the button to the right page or something. I'm a big fan of what I call drip marketing. If you put it in lots of different places, they'll eventually recognize it and pick up on it and say, oh, that applies to me. Maybe I should do something. Maybe I should read that. So just some food for thought.
So Emily and Michael, I'm sure that you guys can figure
Yeah.
out some good ways to
Yes.
go ahead and operationalize this. Thank you.
7 different ways, 7 different times.
Yep.
Yeah.
Any other board members, questions or comments? Awesome. Thank you, Ms. Doran.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, agenda item J, presentation of the CSDE required reading curricula program for pre-K through 3rd grade. Dr. V.
All right, wonderful, thank you. So this is something that's been in the works with the Connecticut State Department of Education for some time and went up to legislation last year, and it was essentially passed. It's Public Act number 21-2, section, let's see, 10-14 HH and 14 II, or 2. And ultimately, what it is a discussion about reading programs and how we teach reading inside of public school districts. And basically, what has come to fruition here is that beginning July 1st, 2023, all school districts in the state of Connecticut must use one of, I believe, 7 or 6 reading programs as approved by the Connecticut State Department of Education. Now, just to give a little background on it, inside your packet, you received on the weekend just the guidelines they use to actually vet the 6 or so programs. And then tonight, I handed out 2 more documents here. I was just going to talk a little bit about the 5 components of reading, which this is just contextually based on, and then the 6 programs. So, in a very reductive and short kind of synopsis of what's been happening in the world of literacy, this is a century-long kind of debate of how we teach reading to children, whether we do it through things like phonics and kind of being able to decode reading, or if we're teaching reading through literature for reading for meaning. As you know, as humans, we don't just decode words, we also have to understand what we're reading, and so there's a balance of 2, and so over a time span of more than 100 years, there have been 2 camps of how we go about teaching reading, and every so often in education, the pendulum swings, and one camp kind of wins out of what the flavor of the day is and how we teach reading. So we're kind of at that crux now, and what's happening here is that, again, still the same thing rings true, is that in order to be a good reader, a literate reader, and you know, all the components of reading, we need to make sure that we are teaching reading in a way that includes, and you'll see in the second document here, the 5 components, which includes phonological awareness, and I'm going to throw out some really technical terms here. Our literacy people will know them. The average person, I don't think, typically thinks about phonemic awareness, but there's one of the terms. So teaching reading typically includes phonological awareness skills, phonemic awareness skills, the study of words phonetically, and then also the ability to read fluently, the ability to have a wide and vast vocabulary, and then finally the ability to be able to comprehend what it is that you're reading. When you look at the legislation, I don't think anybody would disagree that all of those 5 components need to be part of a robust and sound literacy experience. Where we seem to be having a little rub here is that we are now obligated to choose one of only 6 or 7 options. This has become a very hot topic in the state of Connecticut, and you will see that of our 169 school districts, a number of superintendents as well as educators are just puzzled around why we have only 6 or 7 to choose from, as there are many resources out there in the world of literacy that would help us achieve the 5 components of reading. In the end, I see always both sides of the argument. One is that we do have some students who are not meeting reading proficiency, and we have students like that in our district as well. And so sometimes there is a way to say, hey, well, here's a program, we know it works, everybody do it, and then everybody should be okay. But we also know, on the other hand, that if you look at any natural standard deviation curve, you'll always have camps on either end of that curve of students who won't be met with any off-the-shelf program. And so in that respect, right now, there is a back and forth going on with the State Department of Education as well as the superintendent's organizations to say, give back a little bit of autonomy to the school districts so that school districts can choose what resources we can utilize to fulfill those 5 components. The other kind of just layer on top of this, because we are rule followers here, and I look to Lisa Feckery because she's our partner here in curriculum. We did our due diligence in taking a look at least just at the very surface level, how much some of these would cost for the number of students we have here in our district. And of course, it's not a unilateral decision that we would make on our own. We would bring it to the Curriculum Council. We would bring leveled educators from all of our buildings to come together and vet these programs. But the one that particularly Lisa and I really kind of gravitate towards was almost $800,000 for just our district alone. And you know that our district is only 3 primary and elementary schools, so a district like Waterbury where they have lots of schools, it's just a matter of scale as to what that price looks like. So it's very costly as well. So I wanted to bring it to the board's attention that it is something that is in legislation now that needs to be in place by July 1st, 2023. However, we are doing our due diligence. Fiscally, You will see it show up in my superintendent's proposed budget, because that is something we'll need to plan for. But there is a lot of context going back and forth right now, and so I will continue to bring the board up to speed on where they finally land. I do hope that maybe there is an opportunity to phase some things in. We are kind of in a unique situation now for our district as well, because we are up for a need of new resources. So we are actually at a good time. It's just a matter of, do we have to choose from one of the 6 or 7? Can we not go to some other choices? And that's what this is about. So I'll let you read through some of these.
Through the chair.
Yes, Ms. Faressa.
Thank you. Question, Dr. Villanueva, how does this affect the special needs community? Because I know those children, there's definitely not a one-size-fits-all in any way, shape, or form.
Absolutely.
I know my son goes through 3 reading programs. I mean, what's pieced together to help him alone, let alone all the other children. So how does that affect what they're trying to do on a high level?
Absolutely. And I think there's, again, and I'm not going to be able to represent every perspective out there, because there's many. There's also a very large contingent of students families who have students who have dyslexia.
Yes.
And the world of the science of reading and systematic reading programs is a very, very important part of a student's life if they have dyslexia. So in this respect, you will see some programs that say, this is a systematic reading program, it will help your child with dyslexia. In that respect, if you were a parent who had a student with that disability, you would surely want that particular program. But again, those are students who may or may not fall right in the scope of things. And so a program like this, I would say, in my best opinion to share with the board, would not be sufficient for all students. I do think you would grab, a good portion of your students, but you wouldn't hit everybody. And that's why it's so important to have an array of resources, because every one of our students has a different way of learning, particularly if we're in the special needs population.
Thank you.
Did you want to-
I think, like, the way I look at it as well is that that's like your core instruction. And all kids get exposed to some form of that core instruction. And then the things that you may need to do to achieve mastery with students is beyond the core instruction. Many of the programs also do have built-in differentiation or the ability to drop down to lower grade levels. So that enables a teacher in the classroom to differentiate. But then there's also programs, truthfully, that are just designed for kids that need that tier 3 or special needs students with dyslexia, and we do also offer those kinds of programs as well. So I think this program would offer everybody just a nice, any one of them really would offer a nice systematic way to teach all kids, have them be exposed to core instruction, and then anything else that they would need, we would also provide.
Thank you.
Dr. V, before I open up to other board members, when you started looking at these 6 or 7 approved, did you also look at outside of that, and is there other resources available that we could accomplish the same things? And if so, what's the cost comparison if you happen to know that?
Right, and so, yes, I would call that à la carte. And so when we saw the very heavy price tag, there is, again, something very nice to be able to just pick the box off the shelf. However, when you have that type of price tag, how do we do this for perhaps a different price point? There are definitely programs out there that we can purchase. There's also training we can give our faculty to do the same types of things with students that can assist with this. I was actually surprised that certain programs didn't show up on the list and that it was down to these 6 or 7. So the answer is yes. I think we can piece together other resources to achieve what they're trying to achieve as well.
Thank you. Any other board members have questions or comments?
Through the chair. Dr. Villanueva, you said that you and other superintendents are going back to them and finding out why it has to be these 6 or 7 and the heavy cost involved. Since there is such a large cost involved, can you find out why they don't care about reporting on the data? I mean, we're going to be potentially spending a lot of money, but yet they're not requiring any reporting on the metrics. I find that odd.
Yep, and I can certainly ask that. I mean, certainly right now, we have requested the rubric, and it's actually in the guideline package in your packet, as to how they vetted the 6 and came up with the 6 or 7, and you'll see that there is a rubric back there that kind of shows what they used. However, we don't know what some of the other programs or these actually scored. So that's definitely something I can certainly ask for. I think overall, the data or the metric is to see everybody's scores improve in literacy. I'm sure that's probably on the way next to request that.
Thank you. Any other board members? So my closing thought is, kind of a 30,000-foot overview, which is, it amazes me at the more stuff that comes down from state and federal Department of Education, more mandates, more expense. Why are our outcomes flat or going the wrong way? You would think with all of this money and technology and brilliant thinkers that we would see exponential growth in our educational programming. And it's just not the case. And it's not just Watertown, it's across the state. And I'm a firm believer of getting back to basics. I think simplicity and recurring programming, for lack of a better term, hammers at home with kids. Whether it's reading and literacy or it's math, addition, subtraction, multiplication tables. You know how long it took my son to learn multiplication tables just because of how it's mind-boggling. And so, I would be a big proponent, obviously, the friendly reminder to this board is we are agents of this state, right? We must follow the State Department of Education, but I would be interested in weaving our curriculum accordingly to fit with what we know will work, what will help move the needle for our kids, keep us compliant, but also that's fiscally responsible. And my closing thought is, I feel so strongly about that and the fact that the state wants to literally throw a $750,000 plus unfunded mandate on us. Anybody need a reminder where our budget is currently? Mr. Catuccio, right? We need we can't buy uniforms, right? But they want to throw that down at us. If anybody is interested, I am happy to do another letter to the Education Committee because they still haven't responded to the one we sent in the spring, let alone acknowledged it. So I will put that out there. I believe it's our duty to not only be advocates at this table, but also to be voices to the state because enough is enough. If we're not happy with what's coming down, I think it's our responsibility to be a voice. And if we know other boards of education members in other towns, to let them know that they should speak up as well. All right, I will step off of that soapbox. Let me go back to. Okay, agenda K, items for discussion. So at the board's November 14th regular meeting, we voted on an action item to accept a donation from the Water Oak Community Women's Club, consisting of an annual subscription of the Heroes of Liberty book series for each of the Watertown Elementary School libraries. While the motion passed to accept the donation, it has raised questions from board members, and so we wanted to continue the dialogue on that topic tonight. To begin, Dr. Villanueva will review the process for accepting donations from the public and the applicable board policies that are taken into consideration. Board members will have the opportunity to ask Dr. V questions about the process. Upon completion of that review, we will move into a discussion about the Heroes of Liberty series specifically. To start that discussion, I will ask Ms. Lawton and Ms. Hillian to comment first and provide insight and clarity on their concerns. Board members will then be able to respond accordingly. While this will be a dialogue, I would like to remind board members to not speak until I have recognized you so that we can allow each board member to speak freely and uninterrupted and allow board members to clearly hear all that is being said. Dr. V, turn it over to you.
Okay. So in your packets, you have 3 sets of policies. The first one, because we're talking about the acceptance of a donation, is policy 3020 from our business series. And ultimately, this is just talking about any type of gift or grant or bequest to the district. And so the donation would fall under that. And ultimately, what we're saying here is that anything that's valued at $500 or under would meet the criteria of the regulations that are on the back of the policy in your packet there. And again, it does give over some autonomy to the superintendent in consultation with, the buildings in which our donations go to discuss how it would be most suitable to work in our school district. So that is what the business gift grants and bequests to the district policy is about. The second bundle, and you'll see a number of policies, but they're all under non-discrimination. I wanted to also bring up, just very importantly, that under community board operations, students, personnel, I think I'm probably missing one, we have a non-discrimination policy. And so something that I certainly would lead through if we were going through any regulations is that if we have anything that is being donated, I would want to always make sure that we aren't, going over on our non-discrimination policy. And again, just to, the first paragraph in that 1140 is the most basic statement to say that it is the policy of the Board of Education that any form of discrimination, harassment on the basis of race, religion, color, national origin, ancestry, alienage, sex, sexual orientation, marital status, age, disability, pregnancy, gender identity or expression, veteran status, or any other basis prohibited by state or federal law is prohibited, whether by students, board employees, or third parties subject to the control of the board. So that is something that is important to our district, and I do believe, I won't speak for everybody, but on behalf of the board, that is one of our most important policies here in our district. The last policy that I put in here as part of this discussion is actually the student activity funds policy. Now, donations don't always go into student activity funds, but sometimes they do. And typically when they do go into school activity funds, the superintendent again, or the designee, which is typically the principal, serves not only as the treasurer of the school activity fund, but ultimately has some ability to think about the operations of how those donations and funds can be utilized appropriately in their building and or district. So I just thought that those three kind of bundles of policies would be important as the board engaged in conversation this evening. And I just wanted to put it out there so that you had the specific language around donations.
Thank you, Dr. V. So, as it relates to donation of content, material, written resources, books, magazines, periodicals, etc., typically, the value is not going to be $500 or more, right? It might be a couple of books here and there. So, if I understand this, each building administrator would have oversight of review to ensure that it is appropriate for that school.
So typically, and I'm not going to be able to capture every single instance.
Correct.
Because there have been many donations to our school districts. We are also a school district that accepts fundraising and donations.
Yep.
I would say more so than some other districts who have more stringent policies on that. So I would say that typically when donations come in, it's an open-ended way of which donations are created. So they will say, here's $200 being given to the theater club for the use of the Alice in Wonderland play. And I've just arbitrarily made that up. Then it would be up to the folks who manage that account to be able to say, okay, well, we need theater curtains, and so that $200 will be put towards that, and then the letter is given to the person who's donating. Typically, donations that come in aren't as pointed unless it's an actual, like an instrument, which you'll see on tonight's agenda. Sometimes like we have tools going into our shop. things of that nature. But when it comes to the operational kind of resources of the school, typically it's come in as a monetary amount for a particular group or event, so on and so forth.
But if there is a physical donation, non-monetary, the intent is that whether it be the building administrator, library staff, before putting it out in the library, would simply do a cursory review to
Sure.
help ensure it's, the intent is that it's appropriate for that school.
Sure, yes.
Okay. Do any board members have any questions or comments for Dr. V? Hearing none, I would like to turn it over to Ms. Hillian and Ms. Lawton and for their initial comments, and we can go from there.
Ms. Hillian was kind enough to print out some, in absence of being able to kind of watch some of all of this online together, to have some visual of kind of some of the concerns so that it clarifies it's not coming from our mouths what the concerns were. And I'm glad we're able to talk all together because I think there was some misunderstanding. On initial review, when we accepted the gift, just from kind of initial review of the website of Heroes of Liberty, that's where the term anti-woke came from. It was not any of our language, but it was one of the ways directly on the Heroes of Liberty website in kind of previewing what the subscription entailed. That's where that language came from. So it was advertised directly as countering cancel culture, anti-woke.
Right.
Some of the concern was not from the literature itself, or, if you want to have who the biographies are about is really not a concern. I have not read them. That was less of a concern rather than the fact that this has come before the board. We voted to align ourselves and approve it, and some of the very strong language and messaging that comes, if you look kind of even through those screen grabs, some of the messaging that you'll see in there outrightly accuses schools. There's language in there as educators, school brainwashing, woke-to-puss teachers. It has very strong anti-scholastic book language. And when we compare it to some of the policy from tonight, in accepting gifts, grants, bequests to the district, we want to have a purpose consistent with the purpose of the school district, not endorse any business or product. Their messaging and mission, and towards the end of those, make it clear we have made it our mission to create an alternative to the deluge of mind-numbing woke propaganda. Goes on to ask families to sign a petition against Scholastic Book. And I think more importantly, too, in further research is when you mention the anti-discrimination policies we have for personnel and students, there's some slides in there also. I'll just read it quickly. What happens when a story exposes a child to mental illness and tries to tell him or her that choosing craziness and distorting their own sexuality is really salvation? So that further goes on and says that they're referencing that is a book about a transgender child. We wouldn't allow a school to offer our children a pornographic magazine. Why would we allow the woke-to-puss to offer that? So there's pretty strong language there calling LGBTQ children, referring to that as mental illness and craziness. I just think since it has come, it's a subscription, it's an ongoing gift, and one now that has come up before the board, so we look and we kind of review things and we want to feel like we're aligning ourselves with what we're publicly accepting, given that it does have such a strong, outrightly stated mission and kind of a almost kind of undermining educators. It does have language involving anti-LGBTQ sentiment, which is in contradiction with our anti-discrimination policies. It's not about who the biographies themselves, but I think it raises question, do we want to stand and say, this is something that we are supporting and we want an anti-educator mission being introduced into our schools.
Thank you, Ms. Hillian. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think Liz said most of it, and these slides, I think, say it all. That's why we took some screenshots. Again, it just shows the messaging that we have had the concerns about, that schools, this messaging is very much anti-schools, accusatory of our educators of brainwashing, and that they are, abusing their authority basically with our children, says in there at one point. And just talks about, basically that you can't be trusted to send your kid to school, and I just don't think that aligning, like Liz said, as a board to something that is this much against what we as a Board of Ed should be, value, as a value and what our mission here basically as a board is to back our education systems and provide for our kids an education system that is fair, and this just goes completely against, I think, what we should be standing for as a Board of Education. So to back it, I feel like is contradictory, and it shouldn't be something that we align ourselves with. And like Liz said, even with these guidelines about gifts, there are 3 that I could highlight right now that go somewhat against. This gift somewhat goes against, whether it's not to imply endorsement of any business or product, conflict of any provisions of the school code or public law, and it should have a purpose consistent with the purpose of the school district. I don't think that has a purpose in line with our district. And again, it's not necessarily about the books. We haven't read those, so we don't know yet what kind of material those are. The more concerning thing is we're accepting these books, this subscription, basically. That's what we accepted, a subscription from a company that it's clear on, and we're saying that we accept this gift from them, and all their messaging, all their promotional videos go completely against what we should be standing for as a Board of Education. So.
Thank you both for that clarity. Before I turn it over to board members, so we're talking about their online presence, their blogs, their videos, their online content, correct? We're not talking about the books.
We haven't seen the books, so we don't know. We can only go off of what they.
Okay, so
videos.
my concern is the donation was for the books. Books of Harriet Tubman and Thomas Sowell and Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, and right? And so I don't, let me pivot for a second. Dr. V, is there any plan that you're aware of to link to any of this content on our websites or to promote anything other than putting these books in our libraries because they were donated?
So I haven't actually received anything as of yet.
Right, so historically, I don't think we would ever put anything on our websites linking to a vendor outside of a curriculum-based effort. And so my concern is that we're having a conversation of books that haven't been reviewed, and we're talking about something that the district will never even put out in the public space. So are we really potentially violating any of our policies with these books?
We haven't seen the books, but I'm imagining also that the books have some sort of like Heroes of Liberty labels on them. My concern again is we're saying that we approve these things. It's linked to that. We don't know what's in the books. I guess I have no problems with having biographies about those individuals, but why can't we go back to, and maybe this is a question for Ms. Palumba. I'm just curious. What was was there a reason behind this company being chosen for the gift?
Ms. Palumba?
I'm a part of the Waterville Community Women's Club, which is made of women from Watertown, Oakville area of all races, colors, creeds, religions, backgrounds. And the books were vetted. There's also one of our members who is also a member of the Wall of Honor here at the high school. We provide scholarships to high school students, and it was a way to honor a child who passed away, and the family was in full agreement with, let's do books, and put her name in the books as a memorial to her. That's all there is to it. I question, it's sad that you haven't read the books, because they're fantastic, the ones that we've read so far. So I don't see that any books going forward would go off the rails. No one's gonna say, hey, that Hitler, he's a great chap. That's not happening. You're questioning this publisher. Have you gone through the library and questioned every other publisher? What is their stance? You haven't. So I just feel that this is a little misdirection here. We should be talking about the books. It's about public figures who've persevered, had obstacles they needed to overcome, diversity issues, and it's all shown in a positive manner. If you just opened up some of these books and read them, you would understand that.
So if I may, Ms. Helene, I want to clarify your question as part of the vetting process. Was a decision made on these books because of the publisher or because of the books?
Because of the books and all the different ranges of people that they covered.
Like, sorry.
No,
No, I just want to clarify. That's not really my I guess my question is, like, were you aware of the messaging that they send when you chose this publishing company? Because I feel like we can get those same biographies probably from other publishing companies that don't necessarily, I feel like, go against and, like,
So
go against
but-
the school, that aren't against schools and educators, and I guess they really talk badly about schools and educators and tell you can't be trusted. So I guess my question is, like, why this publishing company when we could get those biographies from another publishing
May-
company?
Yes, Ms. Palumbo.
Okay, we didn't choose a publishing company. We chose books that were geared towards elementary school children, and they are books that they wouldn't really have access to, like saying there are no children's books geared towards Margaret Thatcher. There are 0 books geared towards our women in our Supreme Court, our latest Supreme Court justice. There is none, 0.
Were you aware of the messaging that they had before you guys chose this company?
We don't choose publishing companies and their messaging, we choose the books.
Well, the subscription is for a publishing company, so
No,
like.
it's not. It's for the book series.
Okay.
The motion says that.
Okay.
It's for the book series.
It's for the book series, but you're subscribing to this publishing company.
No, we're subscribing
To the book series.
Right, from the publishing company.
Like I said, so
So-
I don't have the first clue what the publisher or the president of McGraw-Hill says. I don't have the first clue, nor do I care. Do I care about the book that they have put out that's in our libraries? Yes, I do. I care about those books and what they have to say. I could care less with their president, CEO, what they say. I care about the content, is it age appropriate? And that's what I care about.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Of course.
I guess for clarification, my understanding, one, is that the Heroes of Liberty is only this series that we are accepting a subscription for. And I guess, two, for my own clarification, if we're accepting a subscription ongoing from a company who's kind of stating that's their mission, so it's not just a isolated book and this is the only books that they make, does that make any difference in kind of looking at whether there's a purpose consistent with the purposes of the school district? I guess my concern is kind of looking for expressing more clarification is, if we're accepting this as a board in a public setting and saying we accept this when this is everything that they've kind of stated, does that put us in a position where we're kind of saying, yes, we're in agreement with that, and that's where my concern comes from, because then if somebody does go and look and just types in, just as we did, Heroes of Liberty, it's exclusively this book series, all of the same language is going to come up for anybody else that looks, oh yeah, the Board of Education approved this, we're good with having this ongoing subscription for X amount of time to continue to contribute to our schools, and that's where I would have an area of concern for, that we're, as a Board of Education, aligning and accepting that subscription, does it give, it could potentially give the appearance that we're aligning with that mission. Which is why
So are you proposing that the Watertown Board of Education develop a policy where any time a book is brought in, that we vet the publisher, and if there's anything questionable, we will not accept anything from that publisher?
My understanding of this is it's not just that it's a publisher, it's a subscription, and this is the only series that they produce.
This is all we're accepting are these books, this series. With that said, it also goes to, if a book were to come in and either a building principal or a library staff member felt it was questionable, they're empowered to not put it on the shelf. They're actually responsible to, and if I'm misstating, please let me know. But I would like to think that our district staff that specialize in those areas and have ultimate responsibility have the power to say, this is questionable, and bring it to Mrs. Feckety, Dr. V, and vet it before it's put out there. I would hope that's being done with all books that are coming in. I'm not sure it is, but that's hopeful. And so if the book's beyond what is listed on their website now, let's say they do one on Donald Trump, okay? And it comes in, if it is whatever makes it inappropriate for our elementary schools, they're empowered to not put it on the shelves. And so I think we have to rely on our district staff to vet what goes in front of our children. And if it's brought to our attention that there's something inappropriate, then we as a board have a responsibility to oversee how it's addressed and deem, do we need to do more? Do we actually have to create a more focused policy? But as I will say to people who will make generic statements about, listen, we all know there's stuff out there. There have been plenty of examples of educators not doing right things. Is it common? No, but we know it's out there. But what I say to people in the public is, I don't want to hear your Twitter and Facebook talking points. If you have a legitimate documented concern of Watertown Public Schools, then you bring it to the teacher, the building principal, the superintendent. And it will go through the chain of command. And if it gets up to the board, then we decide where to go. Do we need to have a policy and labor committee? Do we need to look at an existing policy and tweak it? Do we feel that there is no policy and so we have to create one? That's our job as far as oversight. But I think if we were to go and research every publisher and their staff and who their authors are, at the end of the day, we're probably going to have barren shelves because, let's be honest, every publisher probably has something hidden somewhere. So I think as a board, we should focus our attention on what physically comes into our schools, because we can't stop anybody from going out on the internet. They might find it regardless if they look at the book or not. We can't. So, please go ahead.
I just want to say, though, I feel like somebody giving a donation of a book and dropping off at the library or whatever and leaving it for a donation, to me, is very different than what we're approving or agreeing to. Because what the gift said was we were agreeing to accepting a subscription from a publishing company. That's the only reason the publishing company is like on the table here, excuse me, is because like that's how it was presented, as a subscription from this publishing company. It wasn't like it was, it didn't come and say, here, we have some biography books that we're going to give to the library that are on Harriet Tubman and all these other people, President Lincoln, all that, Abraham Lincoln, whatever. It was presented as a subscription to a company. So again, it goes back to these points, these bullet points that we have here in front of us of whether.
Ms. Hillian, if I may interject, can you show me where we mentioned the publisher's name in the motion or the introduction?
Yeah.
Did-
It's in the note. You can go back, that's what it says.
Because
Says
I
that
thought it
we're-
was
Heroes of
accepting the
Liberty.
Heroes of Liberty book series.
Yeah,
That is the publisher.
that is the publisher, Heroes of Liberty.
But if you go to.
So, that's why, again, it seems like it's
But if you go to heroesofliberty.com.
also an endorsement to a business
all it
and
shows is the
product.
books. So,
I mean, on the front page.
I'm gonna-
but
I'm
if
gonna-
you look at the other areas on the website, you find these other things.
I'm gonna-
Again, so then for me, my problem is then we're aligning ourselves with accepting this subscription of a company, and it's very clear their message. So to me, it feels different than just saying, here's some books, we dropped off, their biographies, whatever. Then we're accepting the subscription of this company and, or, publishing company, and
So
we
if-
agree with it.
so if we just accepted, if they dropped off 2 piles of books, we'd be good.
It might be different, yeah, because I don't think I would be saying, like, I agree with this Heroes of Liberty. What's there? Like, I can't feel good about accepting a gift that sits here and badmouths schools and educators. And tells you your children you can't trust that your children are being.
They're towards the bottom after the books.
That you can't trust, that parents can't trust our schools and our educators with their kids. Like, I just don't see how we as a board can say that's okay.
I'm going to open up. Do any other board members have any comments?
I do. I have a comment.
Ms. Versa?
I have a lot of comments right now. So I just want to say, we're hearing one side of the story about Heroes of Liberty. So if you actually go to their website and read through their blogs, their blogs do paint a broader picture. They're not just cherry-picking talking points. And I just want, just for the record here, half of this country feels one way, half of this country feels another way. We're in the midst of a great political divide. And what has come out of COVID is parents are understanding and seeing a lot more of what's happening because of remote learning. So through that, there have been some concerns shown. And Heroes of Liberty came about as a way to not be preachy or political. They came about as a way to have a series of books that were unbiased. Because in the publishing world, there's a lot of bias. And that's, with most things, there's going to be bias. So they wanted to avoid political bias and focus on providing children with positive role models while promoting the ideas of freedom, liberty, perseverance, and resilience. We've talked about the lives of all these people like Harriet Tubman, Clara Barton, Thomas Sowell. I have the book series in my home. They're phenomenal. It's just a wonderful, wonderful series for children. And they're not against teachers or educators, but what they have a problem with, and what many parents in this country do, again, we're 50-50 divided, is when there are educators that do force their political beliefs and biases on students. Teachers and educators are not there to indoctrinate or be political activists. They're there to educate our children. And we have amazing teachers in Watertown. And no one is saying that this is happening here, but there have been many, many instances across the country of this happening. This series came about as a way to just cut through that and just give good education, good biographies to the kids. They run a blog on their website, and that can be shared on multiple platforms. Many, some such as heartwarming stories to share with your family this Christmas. Why your children need classic hero stories with a focus on life lessons with positive role models. Books to teach younger children good values. Traditional games and activities to kill screen time so that kids are out there playing. We talk about this whole anti-woke thing, and, we talk about this, but really what it comes down to is they don't want to have political activism in the classroom, and we see that more and more. So one of the blogs mentions, how do you protect your child from political activism, okay? and personal ideology. So how do you do that? You do that by strengthening and building trust with your child, by giving your child attention, by using warmth and empathy, and being consistent with clear boundaries. Now, I'm not sure how all of that is a problem, but it seems to be a problem because I don't want educators to be political activists. They're there to teach, okay? That is the important thing. You know, they go on to other topics. I'm not going to get into other topics here today, but the books promote an idea of freedom, liberty, and perseverance. And, you know, we talk about the fact that, you know, because we're talking about a slippery slope when it comes to censoring and book banning and talking about these things, because again, you know, you may not have a problem with the books, but you have a problem with the publisher. When if we decide to vet and talk about every single publishing company, that would be next to impossible, because, you know, whose idea of what is morally right and what is morally wrong? We all come from a different perspective and a different point of view, but, you know, we have to think about these things. Do we need to take a closer look at books that contain political bias and divisive topics? Maybe. But I think the most important thing that we need for our students is building character traits of perseverance and resilience that should be just as important as the basics, which we talked about earlier tonight, of reading, writing, and arithmetic. They need these skills for life, more so than anything else. And that is the core of what this book series is really about and the publisher is about. They're not against teachers, they're not against the school system, they're against political activism and ideology. No student should know the political points of view of any of our educators. They shouldn't know anything personal about our educators. They're there to do a job and teach. That is the problem. And you have one half of this country feeling one way and one half of this country feeling the other way. And I think that's a little clear here, but I think we should take it at face value to what the intent of the series is. Some of these books are already in the library. They're already in our libraries in the school system. We've donated them already. So, you know, if the problem is the publisher, we don't want a subscription, I'm very sure the Water Oak Women's Club will just buy the books and drop them off. We can do that too. So, that's my point of view.
Thank you, Ms. Versa. Ms. Hoskin?
Listening to, I'm going to quote Dr. V, listening to both sides, I think that we have to remember, and Mr. Chair, you said before about us being agents of the state, that we're not a political board. I think that because of the advertisement that came with this, and because it does present the views of, as Ms. Fresta said, you know, the divide, one side against the other, how do we, as a board, enable our kids and our families to have both sides feel heard? And the only way we can be non-political is by allowing both sides that opportunity. You know, I think having this dialogue that, you know, now is on record is important, because we at this table offer or display both sides. And I think that how we work together to come up with decisions that are good for our students is more important than saying one side is right or one side is wrong. I think that we have this part from the blog that clearly does paint a picture, but I think we have to look at the content and say, we didn't know that all of this was out there, but the books present a viewpoint that should be accessible to families and students who want to read about that. The same way, and I'm going to just take a little bit of everybody tonight, but when Ms. Fressa said about a slippery slope, I think part of the inability to have civil discourse, and we talked about this before, is that everybody feels like they have to be right. And I think we have an opportunity to say, everybody has a voice. And that's the non-discrimination part that I see. You know, that discrimination comes in a whole lot of different ways. And if we don't listen and we don't take the time to allow differences of opinions and viewpoints to be accessible, and I do agree. Like, I don't think you need to have a sign in your classroom that depicts something you need to teach. I get that. But I also think that kids should have the opportunities to see both sides and not feel like, so that's where I'm struggling with this. Like, I don't feel like, as a board, I think it's great that we brought this here, but I don't feel that as a board we can say that a book in our library or something shouldn't be there. We have jurisdiction over curriculum and what's taught in the classroom, but those materials that supplement our growth as thinkers, I think are very important. So that's where I sit. Like, do I like that the political piece comes first before we can even look at the books? No. But it's like throwing the baby, and I'm going to use the little, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Like, let's look at the substance of the materials and recognize that we don't agree on how this makes it look like we're taking sides. That's my soapbox.
Thank you, Ms. Hosking. Any other board members have any comments?
Well, let me just say, I think I quite agree with Karen and what Christine said as well. I think we really do have to separate ourselves from the publisher and the books. Maybe a poor example. I love Ben & Jerry's chocolate shakes. Buy them all the time. But I don't like Ben & Jerry's political philosophy at all. But I still buy their ice cream and drink their milkshakes. The books are the books. I like your idea of maybe someone could buy the books and donate them to the library, and then we're not connected with them, we just have the books. Rob, I know you said we don't know what the political philosophy is of a lot of publishers, but we still buy the books.
Right.
So, and I can fully understand our friends on the other aisle. This is very far right, obviously, and I think Fox News promotes them as well, so it's very far right, I would agree. But the books are biographies, and everyone that's read them said they're great. So, I don't know. What do you think, Cindy?
Well, I agree with, the comments brought forth by Karen, that we have to be very careful where we try to make the divide. Who are we to say what's right or wrong? It's a shame that this publisher has this out there. I'm actually kind of glad that there's only very few likes on there for this. But I think the value of the books themselves to teach about these public figures that played such important roles in the history of our country, especially for the age group, is very important. We can go back and ask if they don't mind donating the books themselves without having any name of the publisher itself. Just donate the books in the child's name as a wonderful memory.
So I will ask first, Ms. Paloma, is that something that would be amenable?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Massey?
Yes.
Quick comment. I just didn't get a chance to talk.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's good to hear from anybody on the topic. I know it's a challenging one, but personally, I view it was a subscription, which was the gift. I believe that was the terminology there. And to me, what my issue was is that it does imply an endorsement by taking a subscription. I would just encourage all board members to actually watch the video. And it came at an opportune time just because I watched that video after we accepted it there, and it was, to me, puts us at ends with our own policy. I just got done talking about bullying and harassment in our schools, and in the promotional video on that page there, I believe they use the term woke crybabies. This is right in that main video there, endorsing the product there. So that's my main conflict with it. I feel that it does put us at odds with some of our own codes there.
Thank you. So, did you?
I just had a quick question. Is that the only video you watched?
No, I watched most of them,
Did you
yes.
watch the John Stossel one?
I don't know if I watched the John
Okay.
Stossel. I did these a few weeks back, but I did watch most of them, and I did see.
Because there are very different videos out there. I encourage you to do
I
the
would,
very
but I went off
unbiased-
of their main one. That was the focal one when you scroll down, and I
Off their
encourage, please,
YouTube
all
channel.
board members watch that video. But again, I did not read the books. I would love to read the books themselves there, but this was for a subscription.
The gift was for the books. Okay, I want to make that very clear. The gifts were in memory of a student. The donation is the books, not the publisher, but the books, the biographies
Was it a
themselves.
subscription, though? That was the way
I think that was used. So,
was?
you know,
Yes.
listen, I
David
think,
Hero.
I think we're in agreement.
Syntax
I
here.
think we're in agreement that we are apolitical. We don't want undue influence on either side. So, would it be acceptable if the Waterloo Community Women's Club made the donation of the books, and we either rescind the previous motion and have a new motion for a donation of the books, and we can even describe which books? We'll pull the books that are currently listed, and that way we're accepting the donation of those 12 books. And I think it achieves we don't have a perceived relationship or recommendation or tie or anything else to the publisher, and we just keep it at the books. I think we're all in agreement that's the intent. There was no intent of trying to slide in any, internet influence on kids. We wanted books in the school. So I think, would that be okay if we did something like that?
I don't have issues with biographies. I think the alarming part, and if I even quote myself from our last meeting, I said that I trust our educators to make sure we're providing resources that are appropriate. I still do. But again, I think this was important to have this conversation from everybody on the record because it puts it out there so there is no miscommunication that when somebody sees in Town Times we've accepted Heroes of Liberty, the Board of Education wants what and Googles and says this. So I feel better that we had this conversation as a board on the record as to where we stand, that's not the goal, wasn't the intent. We're all on the same page that we're not trying, nobody's trying to push an agenda. Biographies are not the issue or censorship, but that it's just being cautious of what messaging we're aligning ourselves with as a board has been the concern. So yeah, I personally don't have issue with instituting biographies. It was more aligning ourselves in that way with the messaging, in the way that the motion was made, the way it was come about and shared publicly.
Fair enough. Ms. Hillian, are you okay with us either rescinding, or I have to look at Robert's rules to figure out the best way to go about it, but either rescinding or amending the motion to not accept the subscription but accept the books?
Yeah, I would feel way more comfortable if we take the subscription out of it.
Okay. Mr.
Because we're
Malaguti?
not aligning ourselves with.
Subscription was the word I took main issue with that, so yes.
Okay. On this side, anybody opposed to taking those steps? Okay, so we will work on that for the next board meeting. Just got to figure out the logistics of if we need to rescind it completely or just amend the motion, whatever's going to be cleanest. So, thank you, everyone. I appreciate that dialogue, and I think we're all on the same page as far as, what it is that we want in our schools. Okay. Where am I? Ms. Hosking, any communications?
Yes, we received a letter from Chief Verniger, and Dr. V was able to get it all out to us in regards to the Tower Road entrance here at the high school and their involvement in terms of its use. So that is the only communication that we've received.
Thank you. Committee reports. Back to you, Ms. Hoskin, Curriculum and Instruction.
None at this time.
Mr. Malaguti, Policy and Labor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a discussion on policies, open discussion here on policy 3020, and then also got into the administrative regulations 3020R, had a review of our policy 1140 and 1140R, and the personnel 4090 non-discrimination, 4090R, sorry about this, and 5070. Other than that, no other updates at this time.
Great. Just to add on to that, we will be in executive session at the tail end of our meeting. We'll be discussing the working agreement between the board and the Watertown Administrators Union, so that will fall under the labor piece.
Yes, sir.
Budget and Finance. Thank you, Dr. V, for grant applications and literally looking under every
Thank you for
pillow.
that last minute meeting.
Yeah, and thank you, board members, for jumping on for that special meeting. Mr. Gavalas, Facilities PBC Operations.
No report tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And Ms. Palumba, Governance Community Engagement.
No report at this time, but I do want to inform everyone that I will be sending out a reminder to families on the Facebook page to fill out the lunch forms.
Awesome. Okay. Board Chair Report. I typically don't have much to say, but when I do, I have a lot to say. So there's always a lot going on in our district. However, I'm not sure most truly understand the depths of activity. From the outside, Watertown Public Schools are simply educators. However, deep down within, we are a business whose product service is educating the children of Watertown and Oakville. It seems simple enough. However, here is a brief list of what is being worked on a daily basis. Staffing, increases in enrollment, increases in the need for special education services, traffic pattern studies, curriculum from the state, facilities management, capital improvement projects, school climate at 5 different schools. Being an employer, managing and following state legislation that it could impact our district, curriculum review and development, and of course the budget and navigating how we pay for it all. And of course, teaching our children and managing the many personalities that enter our schools each day. From a board member perspective, we have bi-weekly meetings throughout much of the year. We have subcommittee meetings and the occasional special meeting to tackle time-sensitive action items. We have conversations with parents and community leaders. We keep a pulse on what is impacting education in our state and around the country. And we do all of this voluntarily. As we begin to close out 2022, I would like to thank my fellow board members, Dr. Villanueva, her administrative team, and all of our teachers and staff across our great district for continuing to give selflessly to our children. Regardless of what holiday you celebrate, may you and your family celebrate together happily and healthfully. May this time of year afford you time to rest, relax, to count the many blessings that you have, and recharge so that we can hit the ground running in 2023. Thank you, and Merry Christmas. All right. Agenda O, action items. Let's see. Okay. Miss Anita Grigorski of Middlebury donated multiple picture frames to the Watertown High School Art Department. Do I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I move that the Board of Education accept the generous donation of multiple picture frames to the Watertown High School Art Department valued at $2,000 from Miss Anita Grigorski, and that a letter of appreciation be sent to the donor.
Thank you, Ms. Phelan. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Gavalas. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson of Morris, Connecticut donated a BB trumpet?
B flat.
B-flat.
Oh, B flat. I knew I was going to get it wrong. A B flat trumpet to the Watertown Instrumental Program at an estimated value of $1,295. Do I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move that the Board of Education accept the generous donation of a B-flat trumpet to the Watertown Instrumental Program valued at $1,295 from Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, and that a letter of appreciation be sent to the donor.
Thank you, Ms. Faressa. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Palumbo. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. The McGowan family of Watertown donated a Yamaha trombone to the Watertown Instrumental Program at an estimated value of $1,499. Do I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I move that the Board of Education accept the generous donation of a Yamaha trombone valued at $1,499 from the McGowan family, and that a letter of appreciation be sent to the donor.
Thank you, Mr. Gavalas. Do I have a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Phelan. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. All right. Future agenda items and board member comments. Any board members have any future agenda items or board member comments? Hearing none. All right. We need to go into executive session for a discussion regarding the working agreement between the Watertown Board of Education and the Watertown Administrators Association. Do I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I move that the board go into executive session for the purpose of discussing the working agreement between the Watertown Board of Education and the Watertown Administrators Association. Attending the executive session will be Rob Makowski, Krista Palumba, Karen Hosking, John Gavalas, Cindy Phelan, Kathy Hillian, Liz Lawton, Dr. Allison Villanueva, and myself, Jason Malaguti.
Thank you, Mr. Malaguti. Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
Oh, second. That was me.
Any discussion?
No, sir.
All those in favor?